The real reason mirrors were covered after death. The veil between worlds. What if I told you that mirrors are not just reflections of the world, but gateways? That in the moment of death, something lingers, something that can slip through the glass. For centuries, across cultures and continents, one eerie tradition persists, the covering of mirrors after death. In Victorian England, they were draped in black. In Jewish custom, they are hidden during Shiva. In the American South, some still turn mirrors to face the wall when a soul passes. But why? Is it mere superstition? A sentimental gesture? Or does this ritual hold a deeper, more unsettling truth? One tied to the very nature of the soul, the afterlife, and the thin veil between the living and the dead. Today, we journey into the shadows of history, into the whispers of ancient mystics and the guarded secrets of the occult. We'll uncover the real reason mirrors were covered after death and why, even now, this practice might hold a power we've forgotten. By the end of this video, you'll understand the esoteric beliefs about mirrors as portals to the unseen, the spiritual dangers our ancestors feared, and most chillingly, why some say the dead can watch us through them. So tell me, do you still trust your reflection? Mirrors as portals of the soul. To understand why mirrors were feared in death, we must first understand how our ancestors saw them in life. And to them, a mirror was never just a piece of glass. It was a boundary between worlds. From the very dawn of civilization, mirrors were sacred and dangerous. The Aztecs believed Tezcatl, their obsidian mirrors, could reveal the spirit world. The Chinese buried bronze mirrors with the dead to guide them in the afterlife. And in Egypt, mirrors were placed in tombs so the soul could recognize itself in the Duat, the realm of the dead. But why this universal link between mirrors and the unseen? The ancient Greeks spoke of reflections as imperfect copies of reality, echoes of Plato's world of forms. But others went further. The Romans believed mirrors could trap fragments of the soul. If you broke one, you shattered part of yourself, leading to the infamous 7 years of bad luck, a curse born from the idea that the soul needed time to regenerate. By the Middle Ages, mirrors became tools of necromancy, windows for speaking to the dead. European folklore warned that if a dying person glimpsed their reflection, their soul might be trapped in the glass, unable to move on. Some even believed malevolent spirits could use mirrors as doorways, slipping into our world under the guise of a familiar face. And this brings us to the Victorian era, when death was an ever-present specter. The custom of covering mirrors wasn't just about grief, it was protection. They feared that in the liminal hours after death, the soul lingered, confused. If it saw its own reflection, it might mistake it for the living world and stay. But the most chilling belief? That mirrors could become anchors, not just for the departed, but for something else, something that watched. The mirror as a soul trap. Imagine, for a moment, that a mirror is not a passive object, but a living thing, a membrane between worlds, breathing in the light, and sometimes breathing something back out. Across esoteric traditions, one terrifying idea repeats: mirrors can steal the soul. The Taoists called the reflection ancient, the shadow spirit, a fragile echo of the true self that could be captured or corrupted. In European folk magic, breaking a mirror didn't just bring bad luck, it released the soul fragments trapped inside, leaving them vulnerable to possession. But why would this danger intensify at the moment of death? Modern occultists like Robert Fludd, the 17th century alchemist, wrote that mirrors hold a memory, not just of images, but of the emotions and energies of those who gazed into them. In death, when the soul detaches from the body, it becomes untethered energy, raw, impressionable. A mirror, charged with a lifetime of reflections, could act like a spiritual magnet, pulling the disoriented soul into its depths. This is why cultures worldwide enacted the same ritual: cover the mirrors, shut the gates. In Ireland, they went further: clocks were stopped, lest time itself bind the departing soul. In Mexico, mirrors were turned to the wall during Dia de los Muertos, not out of fear, but respect, to avoid confusing returning spirits with false copies of themselves. But the darkest legends speak of something worse than accidental trapping. They whisper of hungry things that lurk behind reflections, waiting for the veil to thin. The hungry glass. Not all reflections are empty. Some traditions warn that mirrors, especially old ones, develop a taste for souls. And in the vulnerable hours after death, they learn to bite. In the folklore of Wales and the Appalachian Mountains, there are tales of the hungry glass mirrors that grow parasitic over time, absorbing the vitality of those who gaze into them. After a death, these mirrors become dangerously charged, like spiritual lightning rods. The newly dead, still attached to their earthly image, might be drawn into the glass, only to find something else already living there. Occultist Eliphas Levi wrote that mirrors are liquid doors, substances that appear solid but can be pierced by spirits. In his grimoires, he warns that during the liminal period, the 3 days after death when the soul is said to wander, mirrors must be covered to prevent 1. The dead from haunting themselves. A spirit seeing its own reflection may mistake it for the living body, binding it to the location as a ghost. 2. The living from being claimed. Some traditions say a grieving person's soul can be pulled partway in by the mirror, resulting in the wasting illness called mirror sickness in Russian folklore. The most harrowing accounts come from Japanese Buddhism, where mirrors, kagami-, are sacred to Amaterasu, the sun goddess. Yet they also speak of kagami-oni, mirror demons that mimic the dead. After a death, families would cover household mirrors to prevent these entities from stealing the face of the departed and using it to walk back into the world of the living. Modern paranormal investigators have documented cases of black mirror ghosts, entities seen in antique mirrors that later manifest independently. The most famous? The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, whose apparition was first captured in a 1936 photograph, after centuries of reports that she appeared only in mirrors before stepping out. So the next time you pass an old mirror in a thrift store or ancestral home, ask yourself, how many deaths has it seen? And does it still see you? Working with mirrors safely. Now that we understand why our ancestors feared mirrors in times of death, how can we apply this wisdom today? Whether you're dealing with grief, practicing spirit work, or simply living in a home with antique mirrors, these techniques can help you navigate the looking glass safely. For those in mourning, 1. The traditional 3-day covering still holds power. Use natural fabrics like cotton or silk to cover mirrors in the home where the deceased lived. 2. If you feel uneasy near mirrors after a loss, trust that instinct. Temporarily cover or remove problematic mirrors from your living space. 3. When uncovering mirrors, do so deliberately in daylight while visualizing white light cleansing the surface. Camera focuses on a hand polishing a mirror with a sprig of rosemary dipped in salt water. Cleansing and protection techniques. Monthly cleansing. Wipe mirrors with moon water or a mix of salt water and rosemary to reset their energy. Create a protective barrier by tracing an invisible pentagram or equal-armed cross on the surface with your finger. Place obsidian or black tourmaline near antique mirrors to absorb negative energy. For spiritual practitioners, when doing mirror scrying or divination, always begin and end by firmly stating your boundaries. Keep a dedicated scrying mirror wrapped in black cloth when not in use. If a mirror ever feels wrong, shows movement when nothing's there, distorts reflections oddly, or gives you chills, cleanse it immediately or remove it from your home. Everyday mirror safety. Avoid positioning mirrors to reflect your bed while sleeping. Don't place mirrors directly opposite each other, creating infinite reflections. Consider covering or removing mirrors from rooms where intense emotions regularly occur. Remember, mirrors are powerful tools, not something to fear blindly. With proper awareness and respect, we can honor our ancestors' wisdom while living comfortably with these mysterious objects. Mirrors as guardians of the threshold. Our ancestors understood what modern society has forgotten, that mirrors are not just objects. but thresholds. Places where the veil between worlds grows thin, where the living and the dead might, for one breathless moment, meet. The practice of covering mirrors after death wasn't about fear, it was about respect. Respect for the journey of the soul. Respect for the power these silvered surfaces hold. And perhaps most importantly, respect for the mystery we still cannot fully explain. Today, we've uncovered the ancient belief that mirrors can trap or confuse departing souls. The universal traditions that developed to protect both living and dead. Practical ways to work with mirrors respectfully in our modern lives. As we go forward, I invite you to look at mirrors differently. Not with fear, but with awareness. These everyday objects that we glance into without thinking may be far more than they appear. Perhaps tonight, before you sleep, you might pause at your own mirror. Look into your eyes, past the surface, and ask yourself, who else might be looking back? What did you see in your reflection today? This concludes our exploration. Thank you for journeying into the mirror's mystery with us. The glass remembers.